Hello, everybody, and today we are going to be talking about unlocking your creative mind. It's so important nowadays, especially to be able to tap into different areas that you have the ability to tap into, and maybe you just never opened up those doors. And what we have to realize is that we have that ability to step into this room that could really help us in so many different areas. And I like to think of myself as somebody who has been creative. I think then meeting other people who are really creative, you're like, wait a second, maybe not. Maybe I'm not. I'm on a different level. But I think it's really important that we all have to try to figure out who it is that we can be. What's the creativity level that we're maybe on, and where does that we can possibly go? And today we're going to talk about two different types or two different topics when it comes to creativity. The first one is really why it's so important. Why is it really important for us to become creative? Why is it important for us to be able to step into our creative lives and really do the things that we're looking to do? And then the other area is going to be how to actually find our creative voice. How can we get ourselves to become more creative? If you're somebody who maybe it doesn't come naturally, if it's somebody who maybe you never thought of yourself as the creative, those people who are, but it's maybe not you. So we're going to talk about both sides of that coin and really just try to figure out what is going to be doing over here. So that being said, if you do want to make sure, if you are here on the podcast, feel free to subscribe, as well as on the YouTube channel. Feel free to take a look at all the really cool stuff we have down below. We just released our productivity roadmap, which is really, really exciting, and the confidence course, which the 3 C's, which you should already be able to have on previous stuff. So make sure to take a look at that stuff down below, and it's all for free, of course. And let's get into it. So when it comes to being creative, so there's different reasons and different ways that we can become creative. And I was speaking to a client of mine who is a musician. He's been playing piano for, I don't know, I think it's like 15 years already. And he himself is a very creative person because just like, I think just being in the musical world, he has to learn how to find his voice. And I think that's really where we have to stem from. It's how can we find our voice? It's so easy to just copy other people. It's so easy to just do what everybody else is doing. And if we could start to step out of our norm, what ends up happening is we start to experience different things. And if we could start to recognize that, that could be something that can be really, really beneficial to us. So if we can find our voice and really say, hey, you know what? I've always been told X, Y, and Z, and maybe it's like X, Y, and B. And it's really something different that we can be doing. And it's a way that we can start to see things from a different perspective, from a different lens. If you have a triangle, and if you're looking at it, there's usually one side that might be on the bottom, but you could really turn the triangle to different sides. And if you take a star, same thing you could do that with as well. And if we could start to say, hey, you know what, there's maybe more perspectives, there's more ways we can start to see the world. So what's only going to happen is we're only going to be able to have that success in terms of our own personal lives to allow ourselves to become the people that we want to become and do the things that we want to be doing. And I think it is so key and it is so important for us to be able to take advantage of that, because so many times all we really need is a different perspective. We have one way of how things work, and really shifting our perspective could be something that could change. And what's interesting is that we have the ability to figure out how to really do that, which we'll talk about in just a second. But what's interesting is that you have certain people who might be stuck. They might be doing something. It might be continuing to bang their head against the wall, and they don't realize that they might have just learned it wrong. They might have just learned like the wrong way to do X, Y, and Z, and therefore they keep getting frustrated. And it's one of the things, if I find myself keep repeating the similar mistakes, I'm like, what is my expectation right now? What is the thing that I think I need to be doing that I keep doing, but maybe is just a little off? Maybe I have to tweak it a little bit differently. Maybe I have to go a totally different way around it. And I think once we can start to ask ourselves those questions and be honest with ourselves, so then all of a sudden we have the ability to maybe step into it a different way. It happens a lot when you have certain people who maybe grew up and they're, all the advice they heard around money is all about scarcity, about how it's not enough and how everyone's trying to steal your money and everyone's going to really try to take it from you. And you have to work really, really hard in order to become successful. And it could be true, but it also could not be true. And there's a certain belief that we have around it. And one of the things that I think a lot of people more recently have been doing is they read the books, they speak to the people who maybe found a way to circumvent that. They didn't have to work 6 days a week, 24/7 in order to make $60,000 a year. And what's interesting is that we have the ability to challenge the status quo. And if we could start to challenge the status quo, so then we could really start to play a little bit. And I think that's where we could start to have fun. And so many times people don't realize it, that they have certain beliefs that they're going through, or certain beliefs that they think are the way things work. And it's only because other people have taught them that. It's always interesting how you have certain people who maybe, not knocking on teachers since I was a teacher, you have certain people who might be teachers, and they might be teaching something. They might be teaching business advice, or they might be teaching like, how to be happy, or they might be teaching X, Y, and Z. And then all of a sudden you look at their like financial situation and you're like, wait a second. So why is your financial situation like so bad if you're teaching us about compounding interest and how you can become like really, really wealthy? And sometimes you have those people like who are actually preaching, doing what they preach. And some of the things that I like speaking about are all things that I personally worked for me, and I want to be able to help other people do those things. And I think this area of creativity is something that as I gotten older, and more really in the past couple of years, I was able to really step into the creative aspect. And I think if we could start to just recognize that, I think it'd be something that could be really different, really special when it comes to the work that we're trying to get done. I remember there was a job that I one time took, and it was in a school. And when I got there was a certain way that things were done. And I came in there with just a fresh set of eyes. And I said, why don't we do things this way or things that way? And it was, to me, it's like so obvious and so clear. But I think for them, once I said it, it made a little bit more sense. But they were so focused on doing things a certain way. And I think if we could just start to have that creative lens, and sometimes that's the way to become creative. You got to take a step back. You have to start to ask yourself, what's really going on here? I think that could be something that could really, really be beneficial for us to be able to become more creative. And I think it also taps into certain parts of our brains that if we could become more creative, then it could really help us in different areas. It's one of the things that I teach my students whenever we are working on whenever we are talking about goal setting. So we know it's going to be difficult. We know things are going to be hard. We know it's going to, it's going to take time. And the one direction that we think is going to work is probably not going to work. And what we have to try to do is try to figure out how is it that we can continue moving forward? How is it we continue taking that action in spite of the difficulty as quickly as possible? Sometimes you get hit hard and you're like, I need a day off, I need a week off or something like that. But how can we get back as quickly as possible? And I think one of the things that we have to start to do is we have to start to see how can we be more creative. I remember I was one time launching a program, and I had this whole strategy in terms of I was going to be marketing in this specific newspaper, and it was going to be something that was going to be really, really beneficial for the launch of the program. And I started launching, and I spent a couple $1,000, and then all of a sudden, like nothing, crickets. When one person reached out, and it was just like not even about like the program that I was like setting up. And I thought that was so interesting, and I was so bummed out afterwards. I was like, come on, are you serious? Like, this is ridiculous. And then I realized, wait a second, this is the difficult part. This is the part where I need to get creative. See, I was so focused. I had such tunnel vision in terms of what it is I wanted to be doing. And I knew for myself, in order to become successful, like it might not work. And now I have to figure out what's that next step? How can I get more creative in terms of marketing and trying to find a different way? And I ended up finding like 3 or 4 different other roads to go down. And I got a person or two from here and a person or two from there. And then all of a sudden I had this program. Like, okay, this is amazing. Like we're moving. And I think so many times people don't recognize and don't realize that we have that ability. We have the opportunity to start to take advantage of certain things. So then all of a sudden we can start to really take advantage of so many different areas of our life. And if we can start to look at it, then all of a sudden we can start to see the things that we want to be saying. And what's interesting also is that the more sometimes when we can tap into the creative aspect, so we could be more of a pioneer. We could look at things in a new way. And I think that is something that is so beneficial to so many people, because so many times it's just repetition. It's they're doing what everybody else is doing. And you have those, kids who maybe going against what, the rest of their family is doing. And it's like, I love those families that like everyone's like a doctor and then like one kid goes into business. And everyone's like, oh, what's he doing? And like, is that really smart? And like, it really just against everything and doing, and he's successful. And it's like really, really amazing. Like, I love that. And if you could just start to be a pioneer, that could be something that could really, really look to help. And I think one of the things that we can start to do in order to become more creative is, number one, is just looking at different perspectives. And I think this is something that I actually learned from my mom. So when my mom is very artsy, so artsy that like nobody really gets how artsy she really is. And what's interesting is that she sees the world in a different way, just in terms of like what she's looking at. And I didn't know that until she told me the story. She says every time she walks down like a hallway or something, she's not just looking down the hallway, but she's looking at the different perspectives So the different point perspective. So if anybody's into art over here, so things, there's usually like a 3-point perspective or a 2-point perspective, 1-point perspective when you're drawing. And there's a 3-point perspective where everything connects to like one center point. And then if you like zoom out, then all the lines really go towards that one center. Google it, you'll understand if you see a picture of it. So a 3-point perspective. And my mom said that like every time she looks down the hallway, she's constantly looking at the perspective of like the different angles of what is going on. And I said, seriously? That's ridiculous. And it was so interesting to me because we were both looking down the same hallway, but she was looking at it in a totally different way than I was. And there was more depth to it. And there was more texture and there was more like structure. And there was like more things that just made sense. And I found that to be fascinating, that all of a sudden she was looking at something, doing something, and she just looked at it from a different perspective. And that allowed her to just see things differently. And I think that's one of the cool things that we can start to do. It's just like the triangle example before. What are the different perspectives we have here? One of the things I like talking about when we're speaking to people who are maybe a little more difficult, it's what's the other perspective that why this person might be the way that they are. I remember having a hard time when I was younger, in my younger 20s. I was having a hard time and I was judging this one kid. And every time I saw him, he turned the wrong way, he tied the shoe, the wrong shoe. I don't know if they're wrong or right, but he was tying the other shoe. He was he put his plate down in a certain way. Everything he did just really annoyed me. And I went to go speak to one of my mentors and I asked him, like, what am I supposed to do? Like everything he does. He's like, how can you judge him? And it was such a powerful question. And there was no answer to it. And then I started to think about this person's background and his family situation and how he was grew up and the change that he's already has made in such an amazing way. And it was something that really, really helped me and see a different perspective of him. So every time he did something, I'm like, you know what? I get it. Like it makes sense. And it wasn't even doing anything like to me. It was just like, for me, I had my own issues that I had to work out. And I think so many times that people don't realize that. But if we can start to work on our different perspective, that could be something that could really be helpful. I think another thing that we can start to do in order to find our creativity is play a little bit more. And what I mean by that is take a little bit more of a risk. Try to do something a little bit differently. Draw outside the box. Draw outside the lines that you're trying to figure out. If you're in sales and you're trying to make some sales calls, have fun with the sales call. Try to be, follow the script, but like maybe don't follow the script one time, just to like change things up. Because a lot of times if you can start to be creative, then all of a sudden that can open up a different door. And it's interesting because when you hear people who are doing advertisements on social media and whatnot, so they have like 80% or 90% of their ads are stuff that they're constantly testing, and then they're constantly testing out like 10% of their expense is really just testing out new different ideas, because they're trying to just like throw things at the wall to see what's going to stick. And I think that is so fascinating because they're looking to get creative. They're looking to try something new, to try something different. And I think if people had that ability to really start to see, hey, what's going on here? Do we have that? Can we start to switch things? And all of a sudden, we have that ability to open a door that maybe we didn't think was going to be open before. And I think if we come in with like more of a playful perspective, that could be something that could be really, really shift something. Also, when it comes into creativity, try to step into what you're already good at, because you might be more creative than you think, and it's really just doing the thing that you're good at. It could be a hobby, it could be something that maybe you enjoyed when you were a kid, but a lot of times like you have that creativity already. You have that perspective of trying to see things differently, and for some reason you were maybe closed-minded. Maybe it was an adult when you were younger who said, no, that's not how it works. Or maybe it was somebody else who might have said or done something. Maybe it was a friend who just called you out for doing something. And I remember the one time, I remember when I was in, I think it was ninth grade, I remember doing something, and then a kid who I looked up to made a comment, and I'm like, okay, never doing that one again. And it was so sad, and I think it really took me a long time to be able to just open up again. Not that I was doing whatever that, I don't even know exactly what I was doing, but I was doing something that was just like not cool. And I think that really held me back from becoming me and allowing myself to be me. And I think that's something that's really, really important, that if we can start to just do the things that we're good at, it could be really, really helpful in terms of just the success that we want. And I think so many people don't realize that you have those experiences, you have the things that you need to be doing that can allow yourself to become more creative. So don't let yourself close down, allow the creativity to come out, and understand that sometimes you just need that ability. I remember when I was a kid, I used to my mom used to, I was not good at writing. So my mom used to try and like bribe me to write. So she said every time, and she'd give me like one of those little like paperback notebooks, like journal. You could call it a journal nowadays, but so probably like 8 pages, like double sided. And she said every time you finish one of these of a story, then if you have to write a story in this book, then every time you finish like 2 of them or 3 of them, I'm gonna get you a prize. And that's what she's trying to do to get me to like continue writing. And I had like I thought a very creative way of writing, but like it wasn't like the way that like you're supposed to be writing, especially back in the day when like there was like such strict rules with writing and there was no creativity. And because I got reprimanded by teachers and stuff like that, my writing shut down, and I had started to have this belief that I'm just not a writer. Like I just don't get it because I was looking at it from a different perspective, and I wanted to be different because that's what I thought. Like I thought it'd be cool if I could write like this. And then all of a sudden, you have that ability to do, what I wanted, but then I got shut down based on other people. And it's one of the things that I love about journaling because there are no rules, and you can really just do whatever it is that you want to be doing. So these are just different ideas about being creative, trying to step into that creativity. I think it's really important, whether it's some resilience that you're going to need to get through, whether it's something that there's certain opportunities that are out there that you might be missing because of that. But if you can start to step into it and really just try to find your own creative voice, that could be something that could shift. You don't need to be the next Picasso, but I really believe that it's going to be something that could be beneficial to you and the people around you, because all of a sudden you're going to see yourself going to be having different experiences that are just going to open up to more and different ideas that you'll be able to really step into. So that's my spiel on creativity. Let me know what your thoughts are, and don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see everyone down on the next one. Peace.